Welcome to Saltwater Reasonings. I am in conversation with Kentillia Louis, a storyteller and theatre practitioner rooted in Lucian Masquerade traditions. Together, we entered the world of masquerade as memory, archive, spirit, and the living practice shaped by history and the present. We move through the layers of St. Lucian Masquerade, its ancestral roots, its characters, its rituals, and the ways it continues to evolve across generations. At the center of this conversation is the emergence of the Djab, a character that brings forth questions of womanhood, violence, voice, resistance, and cultural inheritance. What unfolds is a deeper reflection on what it means to inherit culture, reshape it, and take up space within it with authority. Take your time with this one. Kentillia, I am so delighted to be in conversation with you today.
Thank you so very much. I'm excited about this conversation. We always have the best conversation, so I know
We
this
do,
will definitely be one.
we do. So let's jump in. What brought you into the world of St. Lucian masquerade and performance?
So I see myself after, really thinking and reflecting more as a guide and a storyteller. And I will say that because my work has led me to interacting with a number of the different groups involved in the various traditional, cultural elements of St. Lucia. And I want to tell their story through whatever means possible. So I've started using that definer for myself, whatever means by writing, directing, and whatever it is. But it's really about helping solutions and all of us figure out who we are, our identity.
What a beautiful thing to just embrace being a storyteller. For those listening who don't know much about St. Lucia, and more than that, don't know much about St. Lucia Masquerade, what it is, how it has evolved, and about St. Lucian identity. Maybe you can start by welcoming us into that knowledge.
So, first of all, I should say masquerade after carnival is one of the most popular forms in the region. So you get it from Mexico all the way down to Venezuela, some version of it. And so in St. Lucia, it happens again around Christmas, like a lot of different masquerade traditions like Jonkonnu and so forth. And we actually have two types. So it started as one where we have, of course, the band, we have the Djab tradition in it. We have characters on stilts like Uncle Sam, of course, representing various things that have happened in St. Lucian district. So we have Serafina. Serafina was actually the name of Castries, our capital, at some point in time. So it's an older recognition of certain characters. We have the Mary Asset, is Be Pregnant Mary, and so forth. This aspect of the tradition, we find it more in the north of the island, but in Soufrière, we have a version of it where they call it by the traditional name, which is Djab Déwo, Djab outside. And really there you see more of what I think is more of an African ancestral influence on it. So you will not see the stilt walkers, but you have the drumming, you have the chants, and you have what looks like the traditional African masquerade characters, the mask and so forth and all. So both of them happen around Christmas time, usually from November to just after New Year's, every single year.
I know you come to this work from theater, from literature, and your solution, of course. But how did your training in like literature and theater and even heritage studies, how did that shape your creative practice when it came to this evolution as a storyteller?
So what I've recognized, again, one of the roles that I have in St. Lucia is that I'm currently the theater arts curriculum officer for the Ministry of Education. So again, I've had a lot of interaction with schools, with teachers, as well as students, and again, with practitioners. And what I kept hearing from both sides is that the practitioners were in fear that this would die because they felt the schools the children, the next generation, the teachers were not connecting to it and were not interested. And then the teachers and the students were like, well, we see this thing, but we don't know how to access it. We're not sure yet if we want to become participants, but we want to learn the story and the reasoning behind it. And so trying to bridge that gap, I figured, throughout history and throughout the Caribbean, what do we use when we want to communicate? It's always the arts. It's always storytelling, theater. It gives you an insight. It makes you a fly on the wall so you can better understand what you see around you. So that's why I decided, okay, let me use that to be able to connect both groups. So in terms of creating the theatrical pieces, I worked with the practitioners. So it came from them. There's a truth behind it. They were part of the performance, they were part of everything. And then we did it with students in mind. So the first, core group we were looking at was students, and then, of course, the general public.
As we started talking about masquerade, you really put us in the context of the diaspora, the African diaspora, the fact that masquerade exists in so many cultures and it's stretching from, I would say, Belize all the way down, and it shows up in different ways. And we all kind of grew up seeing this thing in some way
Yes,
or form.
yes.
Can you recall your first encounter with masquerade?
So for me, my grandmother on my mother's side, she lived in Castries itself, in what we call the CDC, it's a housing development there. And I will always remember around Christmas, I would hear the music and see the masquerade dancers. At the time, the Djab tradition had become a separate from the rest of the masquerade band. So the Djab used to come out more closer to New Year's, than Christmas Eve and so forth. But jobs being jobs, they had total reign, and you'd hear the drumming, you'd hear Papa Jab come in, your day, twat him out with a big voice, and then the doors would open, and as children, of course, your parents would have told you, you were bad, look, the job coming for you. And those jobs would run into every household, everywhere, and drag persons by their feet. And you'd be there, praying, please, not me, please, not me. This. So that was my first experience. That is my memory of the tradition. Being at my grandmother and looking out of the window and watching children screaming and crying and being pulled and the drumming and all the chaos and the parents just watching and laughing and say, that's right. That's right. You will learn. So for me, it's a very, very strong memory, and it was a ritual for the end of the year and the beginning of the year.
It's funny recalling it, and I'm seeing the joy, I'm seeing the laughter, but you're also recalling the terror and the fear that's in your child body. When did it transition for you? Do you remember when you think about yourself coming up?
I think when I became a teenager, like let's say around my late teens, maybe about 18, 19 and so on, it changed. Because
Yeah.
you're older now, the jobs are not as scary, So you
Yeah.
enjoy watching what's going on. And then by that time, there was more of a connection between the two. So it would start off with the dancing of the masqueraders. You'd see the stilt walkers passing and you enjoying that. But you're waiting because behind them, usually, might be the jobs. So it was a lot of listening. So for me, whenever I think of masquerade, I think of the music, the drum beats and the chanting, the voices, the flute in the background, always the flutes. And once you hear that music, all right, it's time. And then the excitement builds, and then everybody comes out to watch and to enjoy because it was a performance,
It was street theater.
and yeah, because they're on the street, they're doing different things. Papa Jab at some point in time, he always gets annoyed with, his characters because they're troublesome and he kills them, and he has a resurrection ritual, and acrobats sometimes does tricks on the stage, the masquerade dancers dancing. So you're watching all of this. It has a carnivalesque feel behind it, that. And of course, you now involved in it because it needs that participants, element to it, the holding of somebody, the dancers would come and dance on somebody.
I was in a recent conversation with Adeola Dues, and
Right.
she was reflecting specifically on Jupe, but she was talking about, the job is always a little bit dangerous.
and
Yes.
we were talking about the fact that sometimes things need to be a little bit dangerous. Like there's an
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
urgency.
Yep. Yep.
Sometimes we're fearful, and we're
Mm-hmm.
actually reasoning about, part of it is us stepping into the fear and embracing different
It
elements.
is. It is, and one of the things that I learned about the Jap tradition, we were always told, it is a reflection of our past. As I said, all the different characters had some connection to our past in one way or the other. That Uncle Sam, at one time, there was a US base in St. Lucia. But Jab is a reflection of that darkness or heaviness from the slavery period. They say it is the spirit of the T-Jabs, the slaves who were who fell in the molasses. So it's the whole idea of the Djab molasses. That is the
So
story
can
we
you
are told.
talk a little bit more about that for people who have not
Yes,
heard that story?
yes. So the idea is that the tea jobs and Papa Jab tradition come from they're the spirits of the slaves who were burnt either by being thrown into the molasses, because when you make sugar, it becomes molasses before it becomes sugar. So they were burnt in there. And that's why you hear usually the jobs sometimes scream or make noise on the road, because they say, it's the screams, the sounds of them. But generally, those people who were burnt were rebellious. So it was mainly a way of punishing. So now you have persons who are coming out, and that continuation or mind of the rebellious spirits. And even the interaction, because I was told a story about our masquerade, how one year there was a shopkeeper, someone of that kind of class and nature, trees, and a lot of persons had issues with him and how he was treating persons and so on. And then one year, the band, when they came out, they came to his house, they came for him, And when he saw them, I think it was a coal pot full of hot coals, he threw it down on the guy who was playing Papa Jab, So even then, sometimes people tell you that's a further reason for the burning and the coloring and the fact that they put the coal, on their skins, because in St. Lucia the jobs are black. We have
Yeah, yeah,
coals.
yeah.
St. Lucia also was a coaling station at one time. We used to make coals. So, they cover that suit of black. So there's a lot of interesting history concerning the characters, especially the job characters. And yes, as you realize, I have a fascination with them,
So much of
you
it,
know.
there's so much story and history layered
Yes.
into it, and it also feels like a living tradition as well. It has
Mhm.
this origin in enslavement, but it still lives. And I think
It
that's one of
still
the
is.
beautiful thing about the masquerade traditions in the Caribbean.
Yes.
Like it's not
Yes,
a old
definitely.
practice. It reflects current times.
It does, definitely. And that's important. And it's almost what I do like about the masquerade season is that, yes, amongst all the Christmas and everything and the commercialism and so forth, because it happens during the day, during the night, the bands come out at any time, it reminds you a little bit of, for me, it's a sort of grounding. It reminds you, okay, yeah, it's not just about buying the ham, buying the this, whatever, and periods. There were things that happened. This is a reminder of your history, of your heritage, of what came before you, as well as the grabbing, that touching, because they can touch you, they come up in your face, the sound, they're there. It jolts you, I think, out of that communal, sleepiness or, stupor that this time usually puts persons in. So that's how I see it.
So fascinating and layered. So you're growing up with this tradition, it's all around you. You're also doing your training. And so this masquerade is speaking to you on many levels. How does it speak to you as a woman and an artist?
So in watching the masquerade, and you always think, well, if I have to be involved, how will I be involved? If I had to participate. At first, at one point in our history, all masquerade characters were, of course, male. And then slowly they've started incorporating women since maybe the 80s. That should show you we're just around the corner.
Yeah.
What I found was that the women ended up being maybe the masquerade dancers, lights and dancing and the whining and the this and so on and so forth, which is nice. Either that or they were Mary Asset or they were Seraphina. So they were, that woman, the fun woman or the pregnant woman always asking for help and mother of sorrows, or the woman always watching silently from above. And as the woman, that bothered me. I was like, these are all the representations of women we're going to have in our tradition. And so, in discussion with one of the leaders of the major masquerade group on island, we were talking about why is it in St. Lucia, up to 2 years ago, jobs were always played by men. There were no female jobs, none whatsoever. And I was like, okay, so if we all agree this is the rebellion aspect or the part of the tradition that, kind of, as I said, reminds you of what the society is about, makes you think and reflect. Why isn't there a female or feminine presence? And because I said there are things that have happened to women, women are also rebellious. What is going on? And so it is through that discussion, she said, well, that's something, up with an idea. Because again, sometimes we forget our culture is not static. It's always supposed to be a reflection of a time and what's needed. The same way as I said, the two groups came out at different times. Now it's one group and they move differently. The one of the characters, the Actobas, what he used to do 30 years ago now, it's not the same. It's changed slightly. It was time felt to add a new character. So based on that, I went and I did some research because you want to keep it in the tradition. And if it was these were persons who were punished and these were persons who were hurt and this is kind of their redemption or they're
Yeah.
coming into power, what version of a woman do we need to come into power? And I said the battered woman. Unfortunately, it's St. Lucia and I'm sure in a lot of the world, women go through so much and we're expected to be quiet and small. So you take everything that is done to you, but to let the society move smoothly, you don't talk about it. It's always taboo, whether you're beaten, whether it is rape, whatever it may be. I remember a few years ago doing something for Women's Month, and we were looking at the point where things change for women is when you get your period, when you start to menstruate. So for me, it was okay in that ritual of coming with that new blood. All of a sudden, a woman was determined to be weaker. Boys can do things, and once you get your period as a girl, you can't do this. When I thought about all the different actions against a woman, whether she's raped, the blood, beaten, the blood, and so forth, what we decided and what I thought was that her color cannot be black like the hijabs. It has to be red. It has to be red to represent all that she has been through. And because, as we said, women have been silenced so much, part of her rebellion is not running around like the hijabs and grabbing people, but she has to be able to use her voice. So when you see the hijab in her character, she screams and she blows fire. So she's red, she screams and she blows fire and she comes down the road. She is, yes, someone said to me, she vengeance. In a way, yes, she is because she does have a chant where she's asking where all the bad men. She's looking for the men, she's looking for them, those who have done wrong. And yeah, that's how the character came about.
So many questions, there's so many places to go with this Kentillia. We need to dress back and just
Yeah.
sit down and tease out just
Yeah.
the multiple layers of hijab. Because I'm hearing womanhood, I'm hearing defiance. You talk about how masquerade is a living thing. And if it's a living thing, it needs to reflect the living realities.
Yes.
Yet it's still tied to this tradition. What's I have so many questions. Let me try and answer myself. What does the character tell us about spiritual inheritance?
That's a very good question. I think, first of all, let me talk about how I see spirits. For me, spiritually, you are what you are. That never changes. Yeah. The strength of your spirit is there, but sometimes there are actions or experiences you have to go through to make that fire burn.
Yeah.
To bring it out, to connect to it, because there's a disconnect sometimes between us, this physical form, and what we are spiritually. And we walk this road to be able to transcend, to be able to connect to spirit. As far as I'm concerned, we are spirits walking around right now in human form. And so for me, the energy or the spirit of the masquerade, it's eternal, it's ancestral. We are all just conduits to it. So there are rituals or ways of connecting to that spirit and so now manifesting it here and present and so on. And that's why I don't believe the masquerade will die because of where it comes from. It's something that was there before us. It's something that will be after us. As long as there's that ancestral connection, it will always be there. How it manifests will depend on what we need at the time. And I think for me, that is what is needed. And that's why this was the right time to bring out a character like this for persons to be able to, within ourselves, within what our ancestors see and what they feel, and between that and the restlessness in our soul now, we know something wrong. This was a way to communicate. It's also a way of communication, of saying what you all need now is this, to remember you are strong. This is possible. I say that too because apart from that, I'm looking at the characters within the tradition that based on the time, some of them become more popular than the others. So I think that is a reflection of that. I don't know if I'm answering correctly. That's connection to our true selves.
Yeah, I get it. That's the answer. And it is an
Mhm.
inheritance. And you touch on, and oftentimes you hear it, this fear that we will lose this thing
Mhm.
and that it will die.
Yeah,
And you're very
yeah.
adamant. It is not going to die.
It's not going to die. It will change as it needs to change, but no, it will not die. I don't believe so. Do we have to ground it? Yes, because it is possible to sometimes get lost. That I do agree. But it is also that spirit also is untamed, and we also have to respect that. I think too many times in trying to preserve something, we want to hold it and say, you stay like this here, and this is what
Yes,
you should be. But it's living, it's moving, it's growing. You cannot hold it. You can help to try to guide it, but you can't. Once you try to hold it, that's when it's going to die.
that for you, and I love that for us. Um, I love that for us. And when you just accept that this will not die, it removes fear. And when you
Yes.
remove fear, I think it also re-injects freedom into this. This could evolve and become what it needs to be because I'm not
Eggs.
coming into it with a scarcity energy. Yeah, the entire tune is different.
Yeah. I introduced that new character about 3 years now, and I'll be just watching because people get in touch with me. Is it okay to use it? I keep saying, do what you need with it.
Mm,
And a couple of things have happened. One, some people are still unsure about it. But this year, for the first time, I saw female, even if persons did not put on a she jab on the road, I saw female jabs out. There was female jabs on the road. And that, as I said, we never had that before. So um, I'm watching what it's doing and how it's going. So
and really situating yourself as a conduit because it's not yours, it's ours.
yes.
You spoke to this thing that was real, the experience of women in our communities, and that was not reflected in this
Yeah.
cultural space. So then you
Yes.
become a conduit that opens. I'm curious about the imagery you started when you spoke about the fact that the hijab is red, not black, right? And that's connected to just the bloodiness of the experience of violence, but also to menstruation, to the limits of menstruation, to
Yeah.
the creativity that is menstruation. That
Yes.
blood
Yeah.
is multi-dimensional. I want to ask you, how does the costuming of hijab, how does that become a language of resistance? And we could just kind of reason about that.
So first of all, when you think of it, just the red alone, you can't miss the hijab on the road.
Yeah.
First of all, because she's all in red, and then her clothing is black. So she's dressed in black, and her skin is red. So she stands out in the way. And in the skin, she wears a 2-piece. Because I also wanted her. We're not hiding the female body. It's not carnival, but we're hiding the female body. So she has a long skirt, usually splits on the side, or it can be a full skirt. Her torso, her middle is out, and she has some sort of, top. And so she can be sensual, but strong at the same time. And for me, that was important because when you look at the other masquerade characters and the female characters, they're always very, long this, long that, and dressed and so. Now we're not doing that. Don't police our bodies. If we're going to do this, let us have that. And so you see this character coming down, walking, and interesting what has happened now. She has her own little T-jabs or jabbets. So they're little ones who come with her, but they are all in red. They're all in red themselves. And they have their bicycle shorts as well as, something on, and they are on the road. So they stand out against the T-jabs. The T-jabs do what they do, and they go on and they create havoc. The she-jab is not, she's more methodical. She's not just out there to grab and so on. She's watching and she's looking, she's chancing, and every so often she stops and she'll blow fire and say, "Where the bad men? I'm looking for them. Where the men who need punishing? I'm looking for them." And it's interesting to watch the men react.
What have you noticed about the reaction of the men and then also of the women, right? One of the things
Yes,
I
yeah.
appreciate in this, even when you started talking about the portrayal of women in masquerade, the
Mm-hmm.
fact is that we have many dimensions, yeah, and really wanted to show just the fullness and the dimensions that exist. So, what have you noticed about the responses of male bodies?
The men they're not sure how to behave. So far, a lot of them it's more shock. It's more they freeze. A lot of them freeze, like, what is going on? What is happening? They don't know how to react because they're not accustomed of being in danger. Because when the masquerade came on the road, remember, they would run after children or somebody come in front of people. But this is the point, and we are looking for anybody. We're looking for men. So we're watching at you in your eye. Are you a bad man? They come and then they come around him like, yes, and asking and questioning. And so he has to be like, no, 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 not me. So he puts him in a position to be like, no, 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 not me, not me, not me. Or just stand up there like, okay, and let it happen to them. You can see for all of them, they've never been in that position. It's always interesting to watch. A lot of the women, it's divided. Some of the women themselves not sure how to deal with it. Whereas
Yeah.
there's another portion that love it. There are people who say, I want to play that. I want to be that. How can I do that? Because that freedom of coming out and showing that side is exciting to them. So it's been interesting watching when I've been able to how people react. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So it's a little bit on both sides, yeah.
That is so powerful when you said that a lot of men they haven't been in a position of being afraid of a woman.
No.
Whereas children are in a position of being afraid of adults and women are
Yes.
in a position of
Yeah.
being afraid of men. And even men are in a position of being afraid of other men.
Yes.
But a
But
woman,
not, yeah.
yeah.
No.
The
Yeah.
archetype also she feels almost like she's here to judge as well. She's coming
She's
in
here to
judgment.
judge.
She's not assuming that all men are bad. She's asking where the bad ones are.
She's asking and she's watching you and she's in your face. And yeah, you can't just snap back at her because she's blowing fire. You
Let's talk about the
understand?
blowing
She
fire.
screams. Yeah.
Let's hear about you spoke about the screams and why the voice was important. Why fire?
Yeah.
What motivated
You know where
that?
it came from? There's a saying, what did hell have no fury like a woman, scorned and all of that. And I thought about all the hell that women go through and all. And I say, they always say, when you see that build up, the release, when you have things build up, so there's some level of eruption. And if she's been reborn into her spirit, there has to be something has to come out. It can't just be voice. It has to be that fire, that defiance in her, that thing that is woman. Because for me, there's nothing about woman that is soft and compliant. Woman is warm. A woman can burn away something or she can nurture it with her warmth. So you are not appreciating the warmth, you go burn it in everything. When a woman cuss you, that's a different kind of cuss, Let me tell you, you could feel it. It's stinging everything. So it's a literal representation of that aspect of woman. Yeah, that was interesting and fun to do. I learned how to blow fire as well. It is very, very intoxicating, and it makes you feel very powerful. I have to say, it's worth trying out.
So, all right,
Yeah,
make
yeah.
a note. It's intoxicating and I need to try it. right.
Is, yeah.
Have you faced any challenges in balancing creative freedom with cultural responsibility?
Yes, I have. I mean, we tend as human beings to make things easier for us. We like to place people in boxes. So you are a traditional, you this, that, or the other, you are that, and so forth. For me, it's not about, I work a lot with traditional practitioners and forms because I understand that that is my bedrock. In one way or the other, everything is connected to that. But it doesn't mean that is all I want to do. I don't necessarily want to do it in its purest sense all the time. So sometimes it makes the persons around you find it difficult as to how to identify or what box to put you in.
Mm.
So sometimes and that's why, for example, I've been struggling with how do I define myself? And that's why eventually I started to say, oh, storytelling, because someone look at you and tell you, but aren't you into traditional stuff? Don't you teach about those things? Don't you do that? But aren't you a director? But aren't you a this? Yeah, but I do all of that, but it depends on what I'm trying to achieve. Really, for me, made me have to figure out what my why was, why am I doing this? What is my role in this society? Because everybody has a role, everybody has a place. What am I supposed to be doing? And then that's how I came up with, okay, these are the things that I want to do. And now I'm trying to educate everybody. Stop putting me in a box. It makes it difficult also sometimes because in certain circles, people don't think about you because they're not sure where to place you. So some discussions are had, and then somebody mentioned, you say, oh, why did you think of, I didn't think of her, or I didn't remember her, or why did we put her here, and so forth. Especially for me in a country where, I will be very honest, one of the things that worries me in this Caribbean space is what we call it now, community tourism, cultural tourism. What does that mean, And that in relation to heritage and culture and the arts and so on. I find myself sometimes in those spaces doing a little bit of both because on one hand, yes, I'm here to help to educate and help to train performers and this and that and so forth. But it can't be for outside, but they need to understand themselves. And in most cases, just in that example, we have persons who are into tourism, persons who are into culture, persons who are into the arts, and you are either one or three. It's almost as though you're asked to choose which box you fit into. And
Yes.
I'm like, no, it doesn't, for me, it doesn't work like that. What is important is the why. Why are we doing this? Who it for? So yeah, because of that, I get myself in situations where I've had, to be the voice to say, no, I don't understand this, whatever, or say, well, no, I want to be part of this. You need to add me here. Or in certain places like, why am I here? You don't understand what it is I do. No, I'm not going to be part of this. But I've accepted that that's my path.
As you're speaking, I'm smiling because I was like, yeah, the Djab coming to meetings.
Yeah.
But I hear the question. A couple of things strike me, and I feel it's very strong. I don't live in a niche, so why must I show up in the world in a niche,
Yes.
right? I am
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
things. I'm this, I'm that, and that. But I'm hearing that echoing from you that there's often a need for you to position yourself
Yeah.
as you move on in your career as well, and then having to ask
Yeah.
yourself, who's my audience?
Yes.
Which audience do I value? And sometimes
Mhm.
the audiences change. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The audience has changed and you have to know how to cater to your audience. One of the things that I do a lot, like when I direct and now as I'm writing, some of the newer work I'm doing, especially musically, very modern music. Um, the last play I just did, the Jabla, which is again about the masquerade tradition. All the stories are traditional stories. There's nothing, and I keep telling persons, there's nothing new about the story of the scorned lover. There's nothing new about the story of the battered woman. What is new is when you give it the latest perspective. You give it, if it happened now, this is how it look like. But it's essentially the same situation. You use the music, you need the movement, you use the terminology of the day. That's what is all that makes it really different. And what grounds it is using the forms that are second nature to us. We absorb a lot of our tradition without even realizing it. So That's what I try to do, because we need to understand there's no divide. We have this belief like either I'm in this or that. No, consciously or unconsciously, your spirit is connected to it.
You
Yeah.
have to find your path. I'm getting that one of the audiences for your work has been very intentionally youth and young people. Yeah,
Yes.
very intentionally. And
Yeah.
so, how does your work with youth space support young artists to reclaim and reimagine their own heritage?
So I have my own group, and I also work a lot with other youth groups around the island. And I mean, youth generally, because again, I recognize a couple of things. One, I would not have gotten here without assistance. I had mentors and persons who opened the way for me. And the best thing I can do to respect them is to do that for others. Second, I remember how hard it was getting into certain spaces because she's young. Who's she? Who's this young person? Who is she? Who's she? Who's she? And if we're not careful, and if you hear that too much, you lose your voice. So what I try to do is to give young persons, young artists, a place to use their voice, a safe space. I mean, we tell them the truth. And again, space where it's okay to make mistakes. Somehow in the world, that has become taboo. As I keep telling them, I said, I don't believe in mistakes. I believe in experiences. You try something, it's not a mistake. It didn't work as you wanted it to. What did you learn? Where are we going to now? What are we going to do? And so that's what I've been trying to do. Help them to find themselves. And what is at the center of it, of course, is our culture. We do a lot of research. We spend a lot of time with practitioners. They get a chance to work with persons out there, be it thespians. Like recently, I sent a couple to work with Kendall Hippolyte and Lighthouse Theatre Company, which is the second oldest theatre company in St. Lucia, so they had that experience. Or it is to work with the flower societies, to understand what's involved, because that's where they're going to get their grounding from. If you don't give it to them, they'll find it somewhere. If you don't give it to them here, they will go out there and connect with everything else.
Yeah.
So that is what it's been about. And it's been a very interesting, actually.
And
Very
you
interesting.
referenced the performance staging of Djab.
Yes.
Can you reflect on that performance, how it came together and how it reflects the history and afterlives?
So I've been going back and forth between um, Super Action Theatre, who is the ones who really do the Masquerade in the South, Euphanats Masquerade Company in the North, and hearing some of the same things about the continuity. We're talking about some of those things. And I wanted to connect it in a way that made sense, not just to them, but to the young person. So I said, okay, we know our ancestors always found ways to tell us things without telling us things. And in the Djab tradition, there's a chant, Yon de Twati Mama, Djab Kamaji Twati Mamai. So 1, 2, 3 children, the Djab is eaten, or the thing has 3 children. And I was like, what exactly does that mean? 3. Why 3? What he doing with the children? Where they going? When he eats them, what happens to them after they eaten? What does it mean? And so I was like, okay, what did it stand for? What it means, 1, 2, 3 different types of persons or stories. And eating means going through the process of possessing them and making them into versions of him or versions of his entourage.
His
So
entourage.
that's where the idea of Djab came from. And so 3 stories: the story of 1, a battered woman; story of 2, a brother and a sister trying to find themselves; the story of 3 friends caught in a love triangle. So, and there was, of course, an ancestral spirit storyteller, Mayo, who represents St. Lucia, because Ayanola was the name of St. Lucia. The play is set on All Souls evening, because coincidentally, All Souls evening of the dead happened at the same time. So for me, that must be a time, and again, to that, usually November is the beginning of masquerade season, so that must be a time when the veil must be thin. So there must be a passing through. So that's right. So that was the idea. That's a time when the veil must pass through, and then you see the stories come about. Masquerade. Masquerade season always starts in November.
Right.
Right. And nobody couldn't tell me why. I said, on Christmas time. I was like, okay, but when in November? What day would make sense? Why November? And when I did the research, all these things happen in November that happen to do with All Souls Day, all having to do with death and ancestral. So I'm like, all right,
There's
something
something
may be
here.
going on around that. There's something here. Again, the story of one a battered woman, of course, is the she-jab story. So we see her go through the play where she's being beaten by her husband, who is, in this case, represented by the Uncle Sam character. No comments on that. And she reaches the point where she has to make a decision. She can continue allowing her voice to be taken and losing parts of herself, or she fights back and she eventually leaves him. And in leaving him, it erupts that side of her. So the idea is that it wasn't an external force. It was always in her. It was always in her. It was just now accessing it. So there are characters that help her to access that ancestral spiritual energy that she had. And it manifests now by the end of the play. We see how each character can come to be based on situations. I know these stories are new stories. We have all those persons, but at least now there is a character you can associate it with, an appetite, an masquerade appetite.
Yeah. Masquerade being essentially theater, and you're
Yes.
bringing that to the proscenium
Yes.
stage, but it's this interesting dialogue between culture, memory, presence,
Yes.
youth, all stories being relayed.
Yeah.
Feels like such
Yeah.
a powerful nexus of energy.
I was very lucky. It was well received by young persons. It was better
Yeah.
received by young persons than it was the older generation.
Why do you think? Why do you think?
I think the young persons were able to find themselves in the characters. They knew who they were. They were able to connect with a character and say, yeah, that is me. Yeah, I'm a teacher. Yeah, I'm a this, because they could follow the story. I think for the older generation, they had put the masquerade characters on almost like maybe a pedestal or a way separate from themselves. So the idea of seeing them as a version or connected to who they are right now, I think for them that was jolting. So you're trying to tell me I am a character? No, a character is separate. No, it's not separate from you. Yeah.
What's powerful there is that I'm hearing you saying that there is a way in which the young people were able to internalize
Yes.
that cultural experience in such an intimate way that many older persons were not able to. And we're so fearful that it's dying and the young people are not going.
Yes. Yeah.
So the irony of that, which is very pronounced. What do you imagine for the future of traditional and experimental St. Lucian Masquerade and characters in particular?
I would like to see I'm hoping to see more persons invest in it in terms of come out and see, understand what's going on, as well as be willing to be innovative. Make it your own, because it is. Because one of the things I got, so how do you feel you can just add a character? I said, because it's mine, it's my culture.
And I'm not asking permission.
Mine. I'm not asking anybody for permission, it's mine. And it's that ownership, that connection there. I said, no, this is not separate from me. This is mine. And let me now experiment and try with it. Even if they do something that maybe the traditionalists are not there for, at least it starts a dialogue. Because if it starts a dialogue, it's alive. We're still looking at it. We still have to go back and see where it's coming from. That's what I'm hoping comes out, of this. Yeah.
During our reasoning, the thing that's coming up is how performance pedagogy is really preserving cultural memory.
Yes. Yeah.
And how it's making space. You see, I hesitated. Let me tell you why I hesitated. I was going to say how it's making space for innovation. But when I reflect on what you're saying, is that you are not asking for it to make space. How it's claiming space.
It's claiming space
for innovation. Like, did you, the you in high school, the you in your initial years at university, did you imagine?
Nope, did not see this coming. Did not see this coming. I think it's only after I left school. At some point in time, I realized this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
This is my passion. And, I had an experience where, of course, parents and family trying to look out for you. And I said, I want to go to university to study theater. They were like, no, You can't make money off this. We are not going to support this. This makes no sense. Find something else to do, whatever. No. And so it made me make certain decisions from very early. I'm like, nope, this is what I want. And so I had to learn from early. And I did have that. I had some wonderful mentors along the way, and they were all men. And I think that's important.
Let's talk about some of the men, the male mentors, and how
Yes.
how
They made it.
how they inspired you.
Yes. So I had Kendall Hippolyte, Derek Walcott, Roel Gibbons, Ifibo Wilkinson, and they taught me, and I'll be not apologetic about anything. You want something, you go and do it, you make it happen.
Yeah.
Because once you understand your why are you doing it? If it's for a greater good, if you have a good reason, are we doing it? Can we make it work? You
Yeah.
fall down sometimes, brush yourself up, and you continue. And I think that was important,
Yeah.
because as women, even in the theatrical space when I was growing up, one of the issues that I had, and that's why people had a problem with me, you don't know me for being on stage. You knew me as a stage manager, production manager, director, which were traditionally male roles. And I remember the first time, we're having a meeting now. We need to go to take notes. Why don't you take notes? And then one day I said, I'm not your secretary. I remember being somewhere and I said, let somebody else take notes. I have things to say. And then, of course, I was called arrogant. But all of that was important for me to be able to, as a woman, have the strength to understand that, no, my voice is important. And as I said, I thank all of these men.
And I'm hearing how that liberated you to not ask permission. And I'm also hearing the connection between, so you're doing this work that centers women's voices and bodies.
Yes.
In Lucian Masquerade narrative in ways that they were silenced before, but there's a very strong connection between that and you centering your voice and your body.
Yes. Yeah.
And taking up space.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Performance space, the theater, all of those things. It helped me to find me. This has been as Errol Hill said, a journey around myself. And I found me, and it's beautiful. And I think that's what I want to share with other persons, especially young persons who sometimes don't know the way. Because that's what this life journey is about, eh? Finding you, the true you, and being able to express and share that out there. However, whatever it is, whatever version of it, it might be. And in its raw form. One of the things I've started calling myself is a Negues Mawor. Negues Mawor in Creole, it means maroon, but it's a female, Neg Mawor, but as a male, derivative of it, because that's what I feel like. I feel as though I came in, I was so, this is how it has to be. This is whatever. I'm like, no,
It have to be this way.
it don't have to be so. I go do it how I want to do it, even though it means I have to be on the edge. I'm coming
Yeah.
and try a thing and then walk out a little and try and do another attack here and another,
Yeah. Making your way. As you speak about your work, it just comes across as functioning as archive, as a healing practice. And also as this memory that's alive.
Yeah.
And it's also, I want to say, also living fairy. Like, I
Living-
don't know if you're hearing yourself theorizing here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, I like that. The Djab story, when we did the play, it ended after she transformed. And I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm just thinking, the number of requests I've gotten to rewrite that play with an ending where, because she doesn't confront any of her abusers, because in the play she's raped, she's beaten, you go show of this, the man who almost killed her. She's never given a moment to confront them. And I've had people who have said to myself or to Auntie June, we will pay for you to do that production again, but you have to finish the play. You need to finish it. You need to finish Djab's story. And I said, I don't understand. But how you mean you can't have, but she has to have I said, but women are not allowed to have resolutions. It happened to you and you have to deal with it. That's the end of this. That is it. It's ongoing.
What a powerful refusal, though, Kentillia.
Yes, so as we said, yeah, I think I have accepted in the work that I do, I leave people very unsettled. So I've been trying to figure out how should I, but you're right, that's it. It makes them go back to it and theorize and so on and all. But yeah, a lot of things that I do, they're like, but why did you end it so? Yeah, because now you're thinking, and 2 years later, you're still asking me about it. It still upsets you. Think about it.
Love that. So that doesn't feel unfinished. Is there anything that
No.
feels unfinished in Djab, in Djab? Is there anything?
So one person said to me, actually, Kendall Nicholas and I have been having this discussion, and he's adamant, and he may have a point. He said, her name can't be Shija. You have to give her a name.
You're saying that and I'm hearing Kendall. I'm seeing him.
Yeah. You have to give her a name.
Yeah.
Shija is too basic. So that might be the only thing is if I figure out, okay, does she have a name? And that one I have not figured out. Maybe in a year time I say, this is it. This is what we're going to call, you know?
Kentillia, this has been a wonderful reading session. It's been so enlightening.
Yes.
Thank you for opening space for us to understand this tradition and accept it as alive, as ever changing, and never dying, never
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, as we close, I want to just ask to leave us with a reflection about what it means to take up space in your own culture. A closing reflection. What does it mean to take up space?
It means being comfortable, being uncomfortable. For me, that's what it means. Being comfortable, being the one to navigate the space and sometimes go against what may be seen as the norm happening and say, but why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But, again, always back to the why. And if it's not making sense, you have to say, but that's not making sense. Come back again, and being okay with the fact that you may be the only voice in the beginning, but reminding yourself is for the greater good and make others uncomfortable. Then eventually, through dialogue or whatever and so forth, you can then reach a point of some kind of common understanding of, okay, yes or no, this is what we want, what we don't want, but at least we're doing it consciously. We are in charge of ourselves. Yeah, that's what it is for me.
Thank you for staying with this conversation. What Kentillia offers us is a reminder that culture is not something we stand outside of. It is something that we live in, something we shape, something that continues to move with us. Masquerade, as we have heard, is not fixed. It carries history, but it also responds to the present, to what is needed, to what has been silenced, and to what is ready to emerge. The Djab is one such emergence, not an addition from the outside, but something drawn from within, from lived experience, from memory, and from spirit. If something in this conversation stayed with you, take some time with it. Let it shift how you think about your relationship to culture, to voice, and the spaces you inhabit. You can listen to full episodes of Saltwater Reasonings at tracyrogers.com.